Yeah, hey guys, I'm actually just going to take a couple of minutes here and go over all of this gear real quick or as fast as possible so I'm not editing videos all night long. This is a Telefunken designed tube bandpass filter. Uses Telefunken tubes, and it's a bandpass filter, and what it does is it chops off the bottom of a signal or the top, and it allows you to take a band out of the device. It sounds amazing. Have a look at my other listings. I actually have a more detailed explanation of this device on that other listing. But it's kind of a Pultec-y kind of sound. It's you know, this and another one are being sold actually as a pair, which is the best way to use these things. This is the DBX160A. You'll notice in all my listings with all the other photographs that I've done, everything's powered on, everything works as it should, everything works properly. If I find myself with a little bit more time, I'll actually hook this up to a rig and show you everything working. If you have a question or if you want me to do a video on something, I'll be more than happy to. Anyway, DBX160A, awesome compressor. It's you know, it's really DBX's updated version of the very famous DBX160X. The chassis is a little bit different. DBX says that it's you know, new and improved, a lower noise floor, etc. Anyway, great unit, sounds amazing, very clean, you know, just wonderful. Anyway, this is the DBX160X. If you're looking at this auction, I did order and replace with the correct knob cap. So we got a new knob cap, famous 160X. It's you know, used on hundreds and hundreds, thousands of records really, as an amazing compressor limiter. This is a Drummer dual noise filter, and really what it is, it's more of a mastering device, although there's some tricks that you can use or that I've used in the past, but it's really a noise reducer for a you know, for like a two-track mix. It's single-ended, meaning you don't encode your tracks before going through it. It doesn't decode. It just simply reduces the noise, and it does an amazing job with that. The Drummer products are extremely stellar as far as, you know, their dynamic processing and that type of thing. You can sort of trick the box into behaving like a de-esser, which is kind of cool for vocals. Very cool device, very clean. You know, no rack rash. I mean, all of the knobs and stuff are intact, which is, you know, a little challenging to find with the Drummer products. Next, we've got a Valley People Dynamite. Extremely awesome dynamic processor. It just does a bunch of different things, and it does them very quickly. So if you're looking to do your gated snares, you want to do trigger, you know, you can trigger stuff with it. It's a compressor, it's a limiter, it's an expander, it's a gate. It's just a ton of dynamics processing. I've got another one of these. I just did a live sound session over the weekend. I mean, it's like your one trick. I mean, it's like your magic box for dynamics. It's an amazing device, usually fitting into your percussion type of mixes, doing stuff with that. You can use it as an auto panner. There's a set of VCAs and a VCA input and a VCA output, so you can, you know, use an inverting cable, and it'll actually behave like an auto panner. It's just an awesome device. This is the Aphex Systems Studio Dominator. The Studio Dominator is again another sort of mastering device, and what it does is it gives mixes punch. So when you're coming off your two-track bus and you're heading towards tape, or, you know, your two-track format, whether it's a CD, whether, you know, however you're mastering, this is one of those devices that gives your mixes punch. Very famous device. You know, they'll have a tendency sometimes to fly under the radar, but if you look these things up and you hear the engineers in Mix Magazine talking about them, it's sort of like a one-of-a-kind box. Very cool. Sounds great. You know, it'll do total limiting. It'll do, you know, you've got your drive section here. You can, you know, track in stereo if you want. It's just a a very cool thing. Here is a set. This is a Dolby Model 362 rack with two, so it's in stereo, which is cool, two Catalog 22 noise reduction cards. Here's the deal with this. When you have, let's say, a set of background vocals or a choir or some sort of background tracks, vocal tracks, already recorded, or, you know, it makes sense to do it that way. This way you've got your pure tracks when you need them. You take the output of, let's say, your background vocals, your let's say you have a choir. You could, for that matter, well, I'm thinking of it, I mean, if you had a stereo synth doing the, you know, those chorusy patches that you find that are pretty popular. Anyway, you run it through this and record it back onto another set of tracks. So what you're doing is you're taking what you started off with, like your background vocals, you're running it through this and you're encoding. You leave this thing in the encode mode. You encode a set of two blank tracks. So now you have now encoded with Dolby A. Cool stuff here. And then you play it back without it. And what you'll wind up having is this sheen, airy, punchy quality that you're just not going to get out of anything else. It's just one of those boxes that you hear about. They're sort of elusive. Nobody quite knows how to describe it, but the Carpenters were an act that had, you know, on those mixes with all of that really popping background vocal presence. That's how that was done. There are folks out there that you know, want to, you know, that can or will or suggest that you modify these things to break it out into multi-bands. You can do that. However, the original effect was done just with a straight Dolby rack, without it being modified. It was sort of one of those things that was kind of found out or discovered by accident. This, so that's the Dolby. Cool device. It's got a sound all its own, and there's just no other way to describe it. What I will try to do is maybe find that Carpenter's track I was telling you about, and you know, I'll tell you at what point in the song or whatever, and you can actually hear this thing. It's a very cool thing. This here, and I'm putting this along with everything else, really so we can just sort of spread the word on this thing. What it is, it's a vari-speed controller for an AC motor reel-to-reel machine. In other words, the old Ampexes, the old Scullys, and that type of thing, those types of machines that had AC motors, this gave you a way to vari-speed it. At the very worst, it's the coolest looking thing you can put in a rack. So if you needed something to fill out, I don't know, 6 or 7, you know, 3, you know, 2, 6, whatever it is, rack spaces, you know, 6 or 8 rack spaces in a rack, it just looks cool. I mean, it's got a crank on it, for example. What this thing really is a huge amplifier. It weighs about 42 pounds. By the time it's packaged up, it'll probably weigh about 45 pounds. But really, and I've seen this thing work when we took it out of service years and years ago. I was going to use it. I used to have an Ampex 440 and a couple of 350 machines that I was going to interface this to. Anyone that's got the older machines should be able to figure out how to wire this thing in. But as far as using it, there's probably like 12 people in the country that are going to want to use this thing. So let your friends know who have an old Ampex or an old Scully and say, hey, this guy's got this. What it really is a huge amplifier and an oscillator. So what you do is you dial in 60 cycles on the oscillator. The amplifier then cranks that up to 120 volts. Which would mean your tape machine's up and running the way it's supposed to run. Now you can adjust the speed. So you can go from like -15 to 0 to +3.5, 7, 15, and so on to adjust the speed. You can advance and retard, you know, here's like the fine tune, if you will. You know, I mean, I don't know, any device that actually has like a Bakelite kind of, you know, crank on it, it's just kind of cool. You got a waveform monitor in here which will show you the oscillator frequency. You've got a meter input for your sync level. So like if you got pilot tone or something coming in, you know, you can key it in that way. You can synchronize two machines together using the 60 cycle sync method. I mean, we're talking about something really from like the 50s and early 60s here. So when I say that there's like a half a dozen, you know, 20 people or whatever in the country that sort of know what this device is, they're going to be glad they found it, because for what it is, it's exceedingly rare. It's the coolest way to do vary speed on those vintage AC motor machines. I'm doing a 10-day listing on this. I'm doing a 10-day listing on these Telefunken bandpass filters. But really, this is one of those things where it's sort of worth mentioning to your friends, because I've never seen one on eBay. They were exceedingly expensive at the time, so to have this as an option, you know, anyway, that's what it is. It's made by Magnatech. They call it a playback synchronizer, and it works when, you know, when we took it out of service. God, it must have been 15, 20 years ago. It's been a long time, but very cool, very cool, very cool. Like I said, all of the gear works, the tube equipment, you know, and this included, you know, could stand for a recap. It would just be an act of good measure. And I appreciate you watching, and thanks a lot. Enjoy the auction. All right, thanks guys.